Okay, we're gonna go through a very basic cold start procedure. So of course pretend we're back down into the water. Currently I have a hose hooked up to the outdrive, so it's as though it's in the water. The outdrive's down. The battery is on right back there, right? The blower would be on if I didn't have this open. And then, so we're gonna walk through exactly how you wanna start it. So I'm gonna keep it just straight up and down, and we're gonna crank it once and see if it starts. Okay, it happened just to fire up and it's staying running. But I want to go through, if it was colder outside, I want to go through what we'd do if it didn't. So if it didn't start, let's say it just kind of chugged a little bit and died, we would just pump this a couple times, try it again. Actually, see, I flooded it. Now, if that didn't start just now, hold on, you're gonna lose view for a second. I'm gonna push this center button, push it and hold it, and turn that. So I couldn't do that all at the same time. I pushed this and moved it forward, so now it's not in gear, but I can give it some throttle. So if a second ago when I flooded it, if it wouldn't start, this is what I do, is open the throat of the throttle. And I'll do that to allow it, even though it seems like we're giving it more gas, we're also giving it more air by opening up the throttle plate inside the carburetor. So now if we were on the water, so we're on the ramp, we're on the water, what we're gonna do, even if the boat ramp's busy, I'm gonna sit right here in this spot, and I'm gonna let this run. And I'm gonna come back here, and I'm gonna be looking for water leaks, making sure all my valves are closed. And of course, would have checked my oil before all this. Check this side, no water leaks. Make sure I got my plug in. Everything's looking mighty fine. So now we're looking at our gauges. We got oil pressure, good. We're waiting now. Next thing we're waiting for is for this temperature to come up. And what we want to see it do is go up to 170. It might creep up past there a little bit to that like 200 mark, maybe 190, and then our thermostat should open and we'll see it go back down, and it should stay pretty solid right about 175. If the lake temperature is really cold, you know, we might see it drop clear down. That's okay. What we don't want to do is see that skyrocket. We can go over what to do there. So we also see our alternators working. We're at 13, 14 volts. That's good. She's a little low on fuel. Overall, things look good. Our tachometer doesn't work, but we can live without a tachometer. Okay, so we're just gonna let it sit here and run. So about this time, we can keep this kind of in a warmed up. When you first start your car in the morning, you'll notice it has a higher idle, you know, before you put it in gear, and this is basically what it's doing. It's warming up the engine. Now, since we're waiting, I'll show you, if you're hooked to the hose, what you're looking for on the outside. So as you can see down here, we have water going in here. You see how that's the exhaust ports on each side of that gimbal housing. That's where we want to see water flowing through. It's right there. We also wouldn't want to see a bunch of water spraying out of here. We want to have a good, nice suction. So that's good water flow. That's what we like to see. Okay. So the other thing about analog gauges, these are all analog gauges, is they stick. Okay, so sometimes, like maybe you'll have a lot less fuel, or maybe just give them a little tap. Oddly enough, that works. So I just put that back into straight up and down neutral with no increased throttle. So I don't know if we have to sit here and wait for it to warm all the way up, but that's what I would do. Now let's say the boat ramp's super busy and I like feel very pressured to get the fuck out of the way. Well, what I would do is I would drive over to a slip. So pull away from the trailer, drive over to the slip, tie up to a slip, and then just let it sit here and idle while we're finishing people loading up and stuff. You know, of course, make sure there's nobody in the water by you. This is a stern drive. We do not want people in the water by the outdrive while it's running, of course, right? That is a human blender back there. So that's basically it. You know, key takeaways. You always want to crank it when it's cold. Crank it once, just see if it happens to start. You wouldn't want to just pump the throttle before you try it, because as we saw, when I pumped the throttle, I flooded it. It almost didn't want to start. So there's no sense in causing ourselves problems. We would only pump the throttle if we went to crank it the first time, it didn't start, or started and then died. Then we'd pump the throttle just a couple times, see what happens then. If that doesn't work, then we pump it again and leave it. Of course, remember, we're doing this, pushing this button. That means it's not going into gear. If I don't push that button, it goes into gear, right? We don't want to do that. We just want to control the throttle, which means that has to be pushed in. So we push that in, and I just crack that throttle plate open. And then try starting it with that throttle plate open. By the way, if you try to start it and you do not push that button, watch this. So now it's in gear. Oh, nothing. That's called a neutral safety switch. So you'll know you did it wrong if that happens. Okay. Still not seeing much on the temp. We'll of course keep an eye on it. But this is what I'm primarily looking at when I'm out on a boat. This is my biggest concern, even more than oil pressure. Yeah, this is what I'm concerned about. You will kill a motor faster. Well, you're more likely to kill a motor by overheating it over and over again than you are really running even old oil, low on oil. Obviously, if there's no oil, you'll kill an engine pretty quick. Those are pretty rare circumstances. This boat's overheating, happens all the time. So I think that's it. Be safe.